Conformity is a concept that affects all of us, even though most of us get a little uncomfortable when someone tells us that we are conforming. Conformity refers to changing your behavior to match that of other people. And so when we think of ourselves here in America in an individualistic culture, we don't like to think of ourselves as conforming. In fact, we strive very hard to be non-conforming, to be our own person. In other parts of the world, however, in collectivistic cultures, they are actually more comfortable with conformity and kind of embrace it much more than we tend to. But the truth is, even here in America, conformity exists. Right now, you're all conforming. You're doing things that you'd rather not do just because that's what everybody else does. Wearing clothing, for example. Some people, it's hot in Florida, some people would rather just not wear clothes in Florida. But you conform just because that's what everybody does. Other reasons you probably do that too. But conformity most famously studied by Solomon Asch. Solomon Asch was a researcher who wanted to see how often people would conform. And he used a comparison line test. So in other words, he would bring in a whole bunch of people into a room, and what the true subjects didn't know is that most of the people in that room were in on the experiment with him. They're actually what we call Confederates. But they didn't know that. They thought they were one of many people who were a part of this experiment. So the researcher would tell them that they were there to just compare lines. And they would be shown a line, a vertical line, and then they'd be shown 3 other lines, and they would be asked to say which of these new 3 was the most similar to the first line. Well, there was a clear, correct answer. But what happened is the false subjects, the Confederates, who were in on the experiment, would give the incorrect answer. And what Asch was really interested in is what the true subjects would say. Now, these are people who don't know what's going on. They think they're in an experiment with all these other folks, and what they're hearing is everyone giving an incorrect answer. So if I were to ask you, would you go along with the group? Would you just say an answer that everybody else is saying, even though you're pretty sure that's the wrong answer? Most of us would go, I would never do that. I am a nonconformist. I don't cave in to things like that. But Asch found in his original studies that 1/3 of people gave the incorrect answer and caved into that conformity. Remember, nobody was pressuring them. They just heard the wrong answer and they just said it to not be someone that stood out. So conformity is something that affects all of us. Asch played around with his original studies and found some other concepts, such as if you have someone else who agrees with you, who's on the same page as you, you're actually much less likely to conform. We know this. When you see protesters protesting something, you usually don't just see one protester, because it's much easier to stand up for what you think is correct if you have somebody else backing you up. So conformity has a lot of real-world applications. Make sure you know what it is, and make sure you're familiar with the research of Solomon Asch.